Hello, welcome to our Project 1 for statistics class done by myself, Ben, and Michael. A little bit of introduction to our topic. It's no new concept that people are hungry all over the world. For years, countries big or small have struggled. Breaking down that information, it could be for a number of reasons, which include the country's economy, policies, or rights. Or it could be due to location. Very commonly around the world, food is scarce due to location. Small islands have it the worst, with very little space to grow agriculture and their high, constant temperatures. Additionally, with a small economy, importing goods isn't the easiest. This leaves many famished and struggling across the globe. So, how did the COVID-19 pandemic affect the number of undernourished people on island nations?
So to answer the question, how was people affected during the COVID-19 pandemic, we examined a data set that we found off of the UN website. This UN website had data spanning from the 2000s all the way up to 2023. This data set has almost 5,000 observations. We decided to look at observations from 2018 to 2022, as we would have liked to use 2023 data, as that would have been a little bit more of a stabilizing after the pandemic. But unfortunately, a lot of countries, there was not any data for 2023 yet. So we had to be content with 2022. This data set has data from countries from nearly every country in the world. And you'll see in our methods in just a minute how we worked on that. So for our external sources here, these are the countries that we chose to discuss for our topic. And this chart here from our world data shows the trend of undernourishment from the 2000s all the way to 2022. So starting around roughly here, we have the 2000s. And we can see that it doesn't change significantly for some nations, but for other nations, there are very noticeable spikes. Our next external source was an article about how after 3 years in the COVID-19 pandemic was affecting undernourishment in food security. So the author broke down four main categories that were mainly affected. So utilization, which included things like panic buying and deterioration in the quality of diet due to the pandemic. Discussing accessibility, economic recessions, economic purchasing loss and power, increases in food prices due to the pandemic, as well as decline in remnant nations. Then there was stability, which affects on the food availability and access, which was obviously at risk due to the pandemic because of the lockdowns. So availability, again, the lockdowns, major issues for labor, logistics, and export restrictions. So our methods, we took the previously mentioned UN dataset and we downloaded it into Excel. Once in Excel, we started examining the dataset and we cut it down. Our goal was to originally have 10 small island nations to talk about, but unfortunately we were only able to find enough. There was only data for 9, so we did 9. So after we took the data on it, we cut down the Excel sheet into the data for these 9 countries, and then we brought it into SAS, which is a statistical analysis software program. And working with SAS, we were able to analyze the data and get some results. The 9 countries we chose were the Dominican Republic, Haiti, Indonesia, Madagascar, Malaysia, Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, Japan, and Sri Lanka.
So this is the island nations that we chose and just visually represented on the globe. You can see a heavy emphasis on a lot of eastern countries because there was just a lot more data to choose from. However, we do have some representation in the west with Haiti and Dominica, the Dominican Republic. They are on the same island, which will be interesting to look at and see how different government policies are affecting the malnourishment. Just because they are sharing a very similar space on a very similar part of the planet, and the only main difference is how they are governed. Then we also have in the east larger countries like Indonesia, where they have several 100,000 people to look at, and how they were affected, and then comparing them to maybe a smaller but more globally powerful country like Japan, and seeing how each was impacted. So here is the progress by each country over time. You can see there's not a huge spike in any one country, Sri Lanka with barely any, and that may just be due to a smaller population, there can be less variance, compared to something like Indonesia, where with the massive population, you can see a large growth around 2022 and a spike over there. And then interesting to look at is just the height difference here between the Dominican Republic and Haiti, where even though they share the same space, Haiti is significantly higher even at a starting point before the pandemic.
Yeah, so looking at another graph with similar information that was just provided, you can see that we have the progress of malnutrition over the years by country, and then on the other axis is the millions of malnourished through just counting people. So in 2018, 2019, 2020, and 21 and 22 is when the graph illustrates. So you can kind of see these countries like the Philippines, Haiti, Melanesia, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correct, Dominican Republic, places like that on the kind of the lower scale, even though these are 5-10 millions of people, and that is quite a bit, but putting it in perspective, looking at a place like Indonesia up top, they're above 15 millions they're in the 15 millions of people undernourished. Like, that's a big deal. And within all these countries, within these lines, you can see a little bit of a spike over the COVID pandemic in 2020, but it is pretty noticeable in Indonesia specifically.
So this is some of our trimmed down data set. A lot of it was just based by country, so we can see something like the Dominican Republic and look at the numbers over time to get into the specifics that are harder to look at in a graph, where it's better to look at trends. And then we can compare that to Haiti right below it, where we can see with a much higher starting value that they really struggled. And you can then look over at the maxes and see 0.7 compared to 5.8, the massive disparity on just one island. And then I also want to look at the mean and median, because given the limited amount of data points, I felt that the median would work better because it can't be pulled as easily by any outliers among the data sets, by any like drastic difference. And then we can come down and look at Sri Lanka, where there was not a lot to change because of their limited population. There just could not be a lot of variance. And then we have right above it Japan, where you do see over to 2022, there is probably about 1 million more malnourished or undernourished people in the country, even though they are an established nation.
So, why should Elon students care? My question to you, why shouldn't students care? 40% of people on this planet attend schooling. That's roughly 3.2 billion. There's roughly a little bit more, 8 billion people on this planet. And if you are part of that 40%, you should be considered lucky. A lot of people, including people on these nations that we've discussed, don't have the opportunity to attend schooling, attend the opportunities and the privilege that you get. You're lucky. Due to the place that we're in, we won't have to worry about stuff like hunger or housing, or at least that's the hope. Being in this position sets us up for success. And starting in those kind of positions on those nations that we discussed with these undernourishment and the hunger problems, it doesn't really set you up for success. So when next time you go to lunch after your 12:30 class with your friends, really just think about it. Like, you are pretty lucky to have that opportunity. Not everyone gets to have that.
And these are our sources. We're from the external sources we use to back up our data, and of course the UN data set.
Thank you.
Thank you.